Looks like Billy left us a treasure map.
Oh, look at that.
Not only that,
This map looks new.
he plotted out the whole trip. Billy thought DB landed right here.
In this age, we're obsessed with media. It's hard not to involve yourself with social media, tabloids, and celebrity gossip. It's everywhere we go. So it can be hard to imagine a celebrity just disappearing into thin air, particularly when people are watching your every single move. However, these vanishing acts happen, and they've happened on multiple occasions. So today on Top 10 Beyond the Screen, I'm going to be counting down our list of the top 10 celebrities who mysteriously disappeared. Let's jump in. Coming in at 10, Ozzy Osbourne. In 2016, The Sun posted an article alleging that Black Sabbath rocker Ozzy Osbourne was missing after a claim surfaced that his marriage to wife Sharon Osbourne was ending over a rumoured infidelity. However, the missing persons case didn't last long, 3 hours to be exact, with reports quickly surfacing that the singer was well and fine in Los Angeles. His wife Sharon addressed their marriage breakdown during an episode of The Talk, stating, "I'm 63 years of age and I can't keep living like this." However, stranger still, the couple were spotted just days later together looking rather chummy, sparking rumours that Ozzy's disappearance and their supposed split was just a publicity stunt. Strange. Coming in at 9, DB Cooper. We all know of DB Cooper, and if you don't, well, I'm here to fill you in. On Thanksgiving Eve 1971, DB Cooper purchased a ticket under the alias Dan Cooper and proceeded to hijack Flight 305, which was bound for Seattle. Shortly after takeoff, Cooper told the flight attendant that he had explosives in his possession, demanding $200,000 and 4 parachutes, otherwise he would detonate. Authorities paid the ransom and gave Cooper the parachutes, and after refueling he was headed to Mexico City. However, after only 30 minutes into the flight, he jumped from the plane, not far from Mount St. Helens in Washington state. Cooper was never found, but on top of that, his real identity still remains a mystery. In July 2016, a documentary was aired on the History Channel about DB, where they named Robert Rackstraw as the man behind the mask. However, the FBI didn't pursue him, so who DB Cooper is still remains a mystery to this day. Coming in at 8, Randy Quaid. Now this one is just bizarre. Randy Quaid was an Academy Award nominated actor who fled with his wife to Canada in 2010 in an attempt to seek asylum from a group they referred to as Hollywood star whackers, who were allegedly out to kill him. Now their escape to Canada resulted in a lot of illegal activities by the couple, which included using fake credit cards to pay for hotels, as well as squatting in one of their former homes. According to CNN, the couple were eventually granted permission to stay in Canada in 2011, with his wife managing to get citizenship because her father was born in the country. Randy's request, however, was denied in 2013. In October of 2015, Randy was detained by Canadian immigration officials and was set to be deported back to the US later that month. Crazier still, he and his wife were arrested while trying to sneak back into the States through Vermont. Bizarre. Coming in at 7, Andrew Koenig. Back in the day, Andrew Koenig was the star of the popular show Growing Pains. However, on February 14, 2010, his parents reported him missing after he failed to board a flight from Vancouver to Los Angeles. His body was eventually discovered by friends in a Vancouver park, with Koenig having reportedly committed. According to reports, the actor had stopped taking his depression medication and was in a lot of pain leading up to his death. Following the tragedy, Koenig's parents spoke openly to the media about stating, "Before you make that final decision, check it out again and talk to someone. There are people out there who really care. Remember, if you or someone you know is having thoughts, please call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline." We'll link it below. Coming in at 6, Richard Stanley. Richard Stanley, for those who don't know, was hired as the director of the 1996 film The Island of Dr. Moreau. However, he was fired after just 3 days of filming, with strange stories and events quickly surfacing from the film's set. The Telegraph reported that Stanley was escorted onto a flight from the remote location in Australia, with him set to land in Los Angeles. However, when the flight landed, he wasn't on board. More interesting still, a month later, some of the extras from the film discovered him living rough in the jungle, with the report stating that he fled from the airport and was living on yams and coconuts at a fruit plantation. But guys, it gets even weirder. He then teamed up with the extras in order to get back onto set, and he did this by dressing up in a dog hybrid costume. Yeah, that happened. Coming in at 5, Patrick McDermott. The disappearance of Patrick McDermott captivated the media back in 2005 when he went missing during a fishing trip. The once boyfriend of Olivia Newton-John was rumoured to have disappeared in order to escape debt and money he owed in unpaid child support, with him reportedly spotted numerous times through the years. One specific occasion was in 2006 when owners of a cafe told a private investigator that McDermott visited their place of business with a mystery blonde. Later in March 2016, it was alleged that McDermott was alive and well and that he was living in a remote village in Mexico with his German girlfriend. However, none of this has been confirmed. Newton-John seemed to get over it though when she married John Easterling in 2008. Good for her. Why wait around? Coming in at 4, Jimmy Hoffa. Jimmy Hoffa was a union official presiding for over 10 years. He was, of course, corrupt and involved in a lot of organised crime, which resulted in him going to prison in 1967 while still retaining his presidency over the Teamsters. He eventually resigned his post in 1971 in order to gain release from prison as well as a pardon from then President Nixon. Now, Hoffa was last seen outside a Detroit restaurant where it was rumoured he was meeting 2 organised crime bosses. Folks don't learn, do they? Following his disappearance, he was declared dead in 1982, but the circumstances have always remained suspicious. It has, however, been established that he was killed by mobsters the day he vanished, even though his body was never found. One story states that he was buried in a shallow grave on a vacant lot 20 miles from where he was last seen. However, this was never proven. Coming in at number 3, Nick Stahl. In the early 2000s, Nick Stahl was a big-name actor, starring in films like In the Bedroom alongside Marissa Tomei. Now in May 2012, it was reported that Stahl was missing amid rumours that he had been frequenting Skid Row in the downtown area of Los Angeles. Word very quickly got out, spreading across the media instantly. Not long after, Stahl emailed a handful of his friends, claiming he was planning to go to rehab, with TMZ confirming that he did indeed turn up at a rehabilitation centre, because they seem to know everything. However, not long after, Stahl went missing again after checking out of rehab, against his doctor's wishes. His wife Rose told tabloids she would not actively search for her husband again, stating, "He knows exactly where home is. It's the loving thing to do for him, myself and our daughter." Thankfully, Nick reappeared and reconciled with his family, with the reports claiming he was now in a good place. However, they were wrong because things took a turn for the worse in 2013. In June of that year, the star was placed on a 5150 psychiatric hold for unknown reasons, and that very same month he was arrested when cops found him and 3 others using in a motel. Coming in at 2, Dorothy Arnold. For those of you who are unfamiliar with this case, Dorothy Arnold was a Manhattan heiress and socialite who disappeared at the age of 25 in December 1910 in New York City. Now, on the morning of December 12th, Arnold told her mother that she was going shopping for a dress for her sister's upcoming party. Her mother suggested she go with her, but Arnold declined, saying she would call if she found something nice. It's reported that after doing some shopping, she stopped to chat with a friend before excusing herself, saying she had to meet her mother for lunch shortly before 2 p.m. Now, this was the last time anyone saw or heard from Arnold. The family of course became worried when she never returned home, but not wanting media attention, chose not to call the police until weeks after her initial disappearance. They held a press conference offering a reward for any information leading to her discovery, however, no one came forward. After 75 days of investigation, the search was called off, with the prevailing rumour being that Arnold died due to a botched abortion. More interesting still, in 1916 a clinic was raided by the police and a doctor testified that Arnold did indeed die there. However, her father adamantly denies these rumours. After the death of both of her parents, it was rumoured that Dorothy Arnold actually committed due to her failed writing career, but nothing has ever been proven. And finally, coming in at number 1, Amelia Earhart. Perhaps the most famous missing person in history, Amelia Earhart. She became famous as both a pilot and a passenger, and her exploits in the sky made her well known around the world. Aside from aviation, she was also a teacher, author, fashion designer, a magazine editor, and a cigarette spokesman. In 1937, Earhart and her navigator Fred Noonan embarked on a trip around the world. However, on July 2nd, Earhart sent out a radio message asking for help, with the pair dangerously low on fuel while flying over the Pacific Ocean. The US Coast Guard sent help, but rescuers were unable to locate the plane. Earhart and Noonan were never found, with them being declared dead in 1939 after an extensive search funded by Earhart's husband. Now, of course, the missing persons case garnered a lot of attention, with many putting forth their own theories about what might have happened. The most common belief is that the plane ran out of fuel and crashed into the Pacific Ocean, subsequently sinking. In 2012, researchers spent another $2.2 million trying to prove that Earhart had crashed on an island instead of sinking to the bottom of the ocean. However, this was never proven.
In at number 10, Geena Davis. Geena Davis has received numerous accolades for her acting work in both film and television, and is noted for her portrayals of strong and authentic female characters, as well as her involvement in advocacy for women in the industry. When she won her first Oscar in 1988 for The Accidental Tourist, Geena became a massive star in Hollywood. She went on to do back-to-back roles in hits like Beetlejuice and Thelma and Louise. When the early 2000s rolled around though, Geena decided to step away from acting because the roles she was getting lacked complexity and the projects just weren't that interesting. Instead, she decided to start the Geena Davis Institute on Gender and Media in 2004 to increase the presence of female representation in film and television. She did make a comeback though when she joined a documentary called This Changes Everything, as well as the Netflix female wrestling comedy called Glow. In at number 9, Meg Ryan. Meg Ryan began her acting career in 1981 with minor roles before she joined the cast of the CBS soap opera called As the World Turns the following year. After that, she began to appear in a variety of supporting roles throughout the 1980s in big box office films such as Top Gun and When Harry Met Sally. By 1989, Meg Ryan had gained widespread attention for receiving her first Golden Globe nomination, which just really established her as an internationally known actor. When it came to romantic comedy flicks, everyone wanted to cast Meg. She was by far one of the most successful actresses in the 1990s and early 2000s because of this. That being said, Meg Ryan suddenly disappeared from Hollywood after a single role as a school teacher in a racy R-rated film ended her career. Meg thinks that because people had pigeonholed her as this comedic and lighthearted actress, they were almost appalled watching her act in anything that wasn't that good girl archetype. She was shocked at the vicious reactions that she received for being naked in one of the scenes, and thus being in the public eye suddenly made her feel isolated. Ryan was 41 at the time of the film's release, and the nudity just wasn't that big of a deal to her, but nonetheless, she disappeared from Hollywood. In at number 8, Rick Moranis. Back in 1980, Rick Moranis was just starting out in his career. He landed a role in the Canadian comedy series called SCTV, working alongside comedy legends like Harold Ramis, Catherine O'Hara, Eugene Levy, and John Candy, many of whom Rick would go on to work with in the future. The reason for Rick disappearing from Hollywood is actually quite sad. After his wife Anne passed away from breast cancer in 1997, he immediately had to shift his focus on raising their 2 children. In all of these interviews that he did much later, Rick mainly stayed very nonchalant about his choice to leave Hollywood to become a stay-at-home dad. During an interview with The Hollywood Reporter in 2015, he said, "I was working with really interesting people, wonderful people. I went from that to being at home with a couple of little kids, which is a very different lifestyle, but it was important to me. I have absolutely no regrets whatsoever. My life is wonderful." Although he did sort of leave Hollywood, the comedian hasn't stopped working. He's almost exclusively done voiceover work from 1997 to 2006. In at number 7, Mike Myers. To me, Mike Myers will always be my comedy idol. I mean, his performances in Shrek, Wayne's World, and Austin Powers were so funny and over the top that I still laugh at them in 2020. Myers was also extremely popular as well during his time with Saturday Night Live, for which a sketch of his was even transformed into the movie Wayne's World. His troubles with Hollywood though started way back in the year 2000 when he signed on to another film also inspired by an SNL skit called Sprockets. Yes, that was the name. Halfway through production, the comedian left citing issues with the script. Him bailing on this production though resulted in 2 lawsuits from Universal Studios, one of which was for $30 million. He then went on to do that terrible live action version of Cat in the Hat, which absolutely tanked in the box office. The real reason he disappeared from Hollywood though was to put more focus on being a husband and a father. In at number 6, his comedy duo buddy, Dana Carvey. Best known for his work as a cast member on SNL as well, and of course Garth from Wayne's World. Dana is an actor, stand-up comedian, and an excellent impressionist. Dana Carvey has audiences cracking up at his George Bush impression and his church lady character during 7 seasons of Saturday Night Live, and created unforgettable catchphrases with Mike Myers in 2 Wayne's World movies. But at the peak of his career in the late 1990s, Carvey stepped away to raise his 2 sons Dex and Thomas with his wife Paula since 1983. While speaking with People magazine, Carvey spoke about his decision to leave Hollywood. In the interview, he said, "I have friends who get stressed about fading or not being as hot. I never quite engaged that. I have a lot of drive to try to be the best I can be, have people be blown away by what I do and repeating it. But the other side of me is fine wherever I am." He also was experiencing a lot of health complications during the late 90s, which caused him to undergo 4 angioplasties in less than a year, followed up with a double bypass surgery. However, his health is tip-top magoo now, and his focus seems to be shifting back to stand-up comedy. Actually, he put out a great stand-up comedy hour on Netflix. Check that out. In at number 5, Jack Gleeson. Jack Gleeson is an Irish actor that received critical acclaim for playing the role of Joffrey Baratheon in the HBO series Game of Thrones. Jack began acting at the age of 8 in the Independent Theatre Workshop, and when asked why he stopped acting at the height of his career, really, Gleeson told Entertainment Weekly that he just wasn't enjoying it anymore. In the interview, he said, "The answer isn't interesting or long-winded. I've been acting since age 8. I just stopped enjoying it as much as I used to, and now there's the prospect of doing it for a living, whereas up until now it was always something I did for recreation with my friends or in the this summer for some fun. I enjoyed it. When you make a living from something, it changes your relationship with it. It's not like I hate it, it's just not what I want to do. He will be sorely missed. Not Joffrey though, I hated that character. In at number 4, Sean Connery. Sean Connery without a doubt will always be James Bond to me. Thanks to a run as the character from 1962 to 1983 that saw him starring in 7 films as a secret agent 007. By 1999, People magazine had declared him as the sexiest man of the century, and then to cap it all off, he was knighted in 2000. That's a great decade for him. One of his last big box office films that he did though was The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen in 2003. However, the film was not very well received and was mostly a commercial failure. I still loved it. Following this film, he kept fairly quiet about his future plans until revealing in 2006 that he had retired from acting. After accepting a Lifetime Achievement Award at the American Film Institute, Connery told the crowd, "I have retired for good. It's been a bit rough since Christmas, but I'm perfectly okay and I feel well. In fact, I'm working on a history book." History written by Sean Connery. I'd read that. In at number 3, Angus Jones. Angus Jones is perhaps best known for playing Jake Harper in the CBS sitcom 2.5 Men, for which he won 2 Young Artist Awards and a TV Land Award. The show was the most popular sitcom in the US with an average audience of around 15 million people. By 2010 though, he was the highest paid child star in television at just 17 years old. In 2012, Jones had turned 18 and really started to feel awkward with the new adult storylines that he was doing for the show. As a result of growing up, the writers could no longer give him these childish lines and innocent mannerisms that Jake was so well known for. By November of 2012, Angus said that he had been baptized and no longer wanted to appear on the show anymore. He even went as far as saying that the show is filth and thus conflicted with his newfound religious views. In at number 2, Carly Schroeder. Not too many people would probably even recognize Carly today, but way back she was best known for her recurring role on the Disney Channel series Lizzie McGuire. Originally booking it as a one-time appearance, she ended up shooting 12 episodes of the show and also appeared in the Lizzie McGuire movie in 2003 in the same role. Unlike most people though, Carly took a completely different route from retiring from acting. In February of 2019, Schroeder announced that she would be joining the United States Army. She then attended the Officer Candidate School and planned on working as an officer in the Military Intelligence Corps. She also received her commission as a second lieutenant on September 20th, 2019. Carly also explained during an interview with Business Insider that she didn't really talk about her time as an actress so that she could blend in and have people not treat her differently. Probably a good move. Last but certainly not least on our number 1 spot, Amanda Bynes. Amanda Bynes rose to prominence in Hollywood as a child star in the late 1990s and early 2000s on Nickelodeon through the sketch comedy series called All That, which then led to her own spin-off series titled The Amanda Show. From there, her career seemed to be on the right path according to Hollywood rules. She was now starring in some bigger feature films, but because her life had been in the spotlight for so long, her downfalls were also highly publicized. She began to struggle with substance abuse and her legal issues, resulting in a hiatus from acting in 2010. She attempted to make a comeback in 2018, but nothing really happened, and thus she began to disappear from Hollywood.
Starting off the list at number 10 is Bison Dele. Before he changed his name though, he was Brian Williams, a 6'11" man who played in the NBA. He was famously known for his skill and for being a little bit unusual. But people were shocked when he ditched his $36 million contract and the United States at age 30 to go fire off bazookas in the desert for fun. Like legit, that's what he did. He moved to Lebanon and reported that's what he did, and he went on an epic journey through Asia. A Sports Illustrated profile details that while he was on his travels, he became a beat poet, writing verses inspired by William Blake. He stayed out of the US for years and caused a bunch of chaos in Australia, where he learned how to sail and bought himself a boat named Hakuna Matata. He told friends and family that he was going to sail from Tahiti to Hawaii. On July 7, 2002, the former NBA player set sail with his girlfriend, the ship's captain, and his older brother. However, they never made it back to Hawaii. Bison Dele, his girlfriend, and the captain vanished at sea. The only survivor was his brother. 2 months later, his older brother was arrested in Phoenix when he was trying to buy gold with one of his vanished brother's paychecks. He was released on bail but later committed without any explanation as to why. Sources were suspecting him of murdering the other boatmates, including his brother, saying that he has always been a violent guy who envied his brother's success. The bodies have still not been found. At number 9 is Sean Flynn, the actor who lived in the shadow of his father Errol Flynn, who happened to have success that made Hollywood history. The young actor Sean was trying to follow in his father's footsteps and become a success as well. But his films weren't much of a success, and it was actually his work as a photographer when he was assigned to to cover America's deadly wars in Indochina. The dangerous assignment is what brought him fame, but it also led him to his death. On April 6 in 1970, the former actor and another journalist, Dana Stone, disappeared without a trace after encountering a hostile checkpoint. The two of them never returned and no trace of them was ever found. Back in 2010, there was a body found and forensic thought that it was him, but it turned out to be a false identification. Since then, the case is back to square one without a trace. Sliding to the number 8 spot is Jim Thompson. He is the most famous and most significant American to have ever lived in Thailand. He was a former agent in the Office for Strategic Services, basically like the CIA. But then he moved to Thailand at the end of the World War II, where he set up a silk business, turning Thai silk into a global commodity. He was known as a socialite, throwing huge parties for Bangkok's rich civilians. The wealthy influencer left Bangkok in 1967 to go on a hiking trip in Malaysia. He stayed at a bungalow and one day he went for a walk and never came back. An article in Paris Review explains just how fishy his disappearance actually was. Jim Thompson was a soldier back in the day with lots of field experience and survival skills in the wilderness. He was also a big guy, which led people to believe if an animal got him, there would be a trace of leftovers. The problem was he had a lot of enemies because of his business and success. No trace of him was ever found, and his Bangkok home is now a museum for the Thai capital. Tons of tourists visit it and call it one of the top choices to go and see. Our most amazing top 10 host Rebecca has actually gone to it before and said that it was a very cool experience. Taking the number 7 spot is Patrick McDermott, an American cameraman who is more famously known for his relationship to Olivia Newton-John than anything he did himself. The two of them had an on and off relationship for years, and McDermott made headlines in 2005 when he disappeared from a fishing boat off the coast of Los Angeles. He wasn't reported missing until a week after he disappeared from the boat, and the 20 other passengers were all giving reports that conflicted with each other. In 2008, it was declared that he most likely drowned, but then rumors began to fly saying that he faked his own death to cash in on a life insurance plan and was actually alive and living in Mexico. He showed up in America's Most Wanted, and Dateline NBC ran an undercover special trying to track him down. In 2017, a photograph made headlines claiming that Patrick had been spotted in Mexico with his German girlfriend. They claimed that it was a 90% match, but turns out it was really just a Canadian pub owner who just looks like him. The Canadian West Stobe says he saw the picture of him and his wife and thought it was bizarre, so he had to call in and settle the story. The two of them said, and I quote, "I guess it's kind of exotic to be seen as a German lover. We got a pretty good laugh out of it anyways." So Patrick McDermott is still missing and the case remains unsolved. In at number 6 is Scott Smith, the musician who was a founder of the Canadian rock group called Loverboy. The band was one of the biggest rock bands of the early 80s, with hits like Hot Girls in Love and Working for the Weekend, which is still played on the radio stations all over the world every Friday afternoon. Scott Smith was one of the group founders who stuck with them throughout all the years until his mysterious and frightening disappearance at sea on November 30th, 2000. Him and his band played together at the benefit for the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation in Vancouver, BC, and afterwards, him, his girlfriend, and 2 friends set out for Mexico on a 37-foot sailboat. As they sailed down the coast around San Francisco, the weather got rough and apparently it threw Smith off the boat. His friend and travel companion Bill Ellis told the Ottawa Citizen that they think a 20-foot wave knocked him off. He said, "We turned back around but couldn't find any of the debris or cushions or the man overboard pole. Coast Guard helicopters arrived within 20 minutes and dispatched 2 search boats but found nothing." Smith's family continued to pay for a private search company, but his remains have never surfaced. Halfway through at number 5 is Lord Lucan, who was famously known in London for being a part of the wealthy aristocracy and was a gambler in the social scene. However, one thing he's also famous for is murdering the wrong person. You know when you mistake a stranger for someone you know? Well, he basically did that, except 1,000 times more extreme. In 1974, he brutally murdered his wife Veronica in her home in London. He hated her because they got divorced and she won custody of their kids. However, Veronica was in a dark room and she actually murdered Sandra Rivet, his children's beloved nanny. The case was a media sensation in Britain, and after the murder happened, Lucan vanished and was never found. He wasn't even declared as dead until 1999, and his son wasn't allowed to inherit his title until 2016. Many rumors have gone around about what actually happened to him. Some say he drowned himself in the New Haven harbor, while others say he is hiding in Africa. He has never been found. It's like he literally disappeared into thin air. Taking over the number 4 spot is Oscar Zeta Acosta, an American attorney, politician, novelist, and activist in the Chicano movement. He was also known for how he relentlessly consumed pills, booze, and other drugs. His close friend and American author, Hunter S. Thompson, says he took everything in titanic quantities that even he couldn't keep up, which says a lot. It was in May 1974 where he visited his ancestral home of Mexico and then vanished. The LA Times reports that his buddy Hunter spent years on and off searching for his friend. With nothing to be found, he later claimed that Acosta was probably killed in a drug hit or a political assassination. No body was ever found, and the evidence shows that it's like he just disappeared into the night. Hunter went on to write a documentary called Dr. Gonzo, which captures the politician's wild ride of life. Alright guys, at number 3 is Richie Edwards, the celebrated Welsh musician who was the lyricist and guitarist for the band The Manic Street Preachers. He made a name for himself in 1991 when he was asked about his commitment to punk music. In front of the interviewer, he grabbed a razor blade and carved the words "for real" into his arm. The injury took 18 stitches to patch up. People close to him have reported that he often spoke about depression and self-harm, but often said was never an option for him. So when he went missing on February 1st, 1995, people thought right away. His car was found near the Severn Bridge, which is also a popular and known location for. However, over the next few weeks after he went missing, there were reported sightings of him in various places, but he was actually never found. His missing persons case was left open by his family for 13 years until November of 2008, when he was declared presumed dead. In spot number 2 is Joe Pitchler, an American former child actor who has been missing since January 5th, 2006. The young actor vanished one day and was never to be heard from again. His roles were made up of a variety of commercials, and his recurring role as Brennan Newton on the third and fourth movie in the Beethoven film series. His last film experience was in Children on Their Birthdays, which came out back in 2002. The following year he returned to his hometown with his family and then graduated from high school in 2005. It was in 2006 that Joe returned to LA again to continue his acting career. At the time of his disappearance, he was living out on his own and was working a full-time job as a telephone technician at Teletech. In the night of his disappearance, he was last heard from at 4:15 a.m. when he talked to a friend on his cell phone, and then he was never heard from again. It was reported that he was last seen playing cards with some friends and was in good spirits. 4 days later, his vehicle was found behind a restaurant which had all of his belongings in it besides his keys and wallet. When searching his apartment, it was found unlocked with all the lights on. His case is still a mystery to this day. Taking our number 1 spot is Rico Harris. If you've heard of him, it's probably because his disappearance became huge headlines when he vanished back in 2014. He disappeared somewhere along State Route 16 near Sacramento. The manhunt blew up in the media, and it was because Rico used to be a somebody. He made a name for himself in the sports industry. In 2000, Harris played basketball for the Harlem Globetrotters, a team which is very famously known if you're an intense sports fan. Before joining the team, he was one of the top 100 college basketball recruits. Unfortunately, drinking kept him from reaching his potential basketball success, and he ended up working as a security guard in LA instead. He reached his all-time low when he was fired from that job for being drunk. It was that day that he left his mom's LA home to drive to Seattle to stay with his girlfriend. His car was later found abandoned outside of Sacramento. The strange details were explained in 2017 by the LA Times, saying that a backpack and a phone which had a video of him on it were found on the roadside, but police found nothing else. Days after he vanished, people were phoning in saying they kept seeing a giant person walking alongside State Route 16. Human footprints were found in the sand, but no Harris. Starting off the list at number 10 is Monique. It has been a year since the actress rocked the industry by going head-to-head with Netflix, saying that she didn't get paid what other comedians did for her comedy special. Things went as far as Monique demanded a boycott against Netflix and turned down the $500,000 they offered her for the special. I'll take that $500,000. Amy Schumer got $13 million for hers, to put it into some perspective for you. So I guess, yes, that is a big difference. Long story short, she caused a huge controversy saying that she didn't get paid as much because she was black. She then went on to insult about 80% of fellow entertainers in the industry who weren't supportive of her claims. And that is when the queen of daytime TV stepped in, Oprah. The two of them were once like family, pretty much best friends, but had an issue back in 2009 after Oprah brought Mo's family on her show without her consent. She ended up bringing her mom and her brother, who Monique has openly accused of her, so obviously there was a lot of beef there. They were able to work things out, but when it came to these more recent scandals with Netflix and the rest of Hollywood, Oprah called Monique negative during an interview, and she clapped back at Oprah, calling her a coward. We haven't heard much from her ever since, and she hasn't acted in anything since 2016. So girl, where are you at? Where are you hiding? Next up at number 9 is Jared Fogle. If you don't recognize him by just his name, he was that guy that was pretty much in every Subway commercial. He was literally the pitch man for the entire company, like that was his actual job. He got the sweet gig after losing a significant amount of weight with the help of Subway sandwiches. His weight loss story led him to being the spokesperson for all of their advertising campaigns from the years 2000 all the way until 2015. We saw his face everywhere, but then all of a sudden that quickly changed and he basically went into hiding. But once we found out why, it made sense. Some people might have noticed that he was no longer the face of Subway and questioned why until headlines came out saying that he was charged for and paying for. He pleaded guilty to his charges and was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. His attorneys argued that he should only have a 5-year sentence since the girls he had sex with were. That did not work in his favor. Jared agreed to pay a total of $1.4 million in restitution to 14 different victims, and on top of that, the judge fined him $175,000. Since then, his disappearance is no longer a mystery, and he is now behind bars. Coming in at number 8 is Stacey Dash. You probably know her as the actress from the iconic movie Clueless. She was blacklisted a few years ago after her political views cost her her entire career. She's a conservative who was clever enough to write a book on her blacklisting experience and called it "There Goes My Social Life From Clueless to Conservative." It all happened by one simple tweet. During the Barack Obama election, she tweeted out, "Vote for Romney, the only hope for your future." She said she tweeted it out because she didn't want Obama to have another 4 years, they were her beliefs, and she was sticking by them. But when she woke up the next day, everything was different. She spoke about it during an interview in 2016 and said, "I've been blacklisted, my agents have dropped me, I haven't auditioned in over a year because my beliefs and what I stand for." After that, she disappeared from Hollywood basically. We stopped hearing about her, but the mystery of her disappearance ended just 2 days ago. She was back in the headlines, but this time it was because of her mugshot. Turns out she was arrested for domestic battery after an incident with a male. So things are not looking too good for her. Sliding into the number 7 spot is James Franco. The reason why he landed himself on the blacklist is really no surprise anymore. It was in the news for a while, and I have talked about it a handful of times on this channel, but for those who aren't familiar with the story, I will sum it up for you. It all started back in 2014 when screenshots surfaced of him trying to rent a hotel room for him and a 7 who he knew was on, and screenshots show that. Of course, when the screenshots broke the internet, people were disgusted and we thought we would never hear from him again. But surprisingly, his career continued on after the scandal faded out. All was good in the hood until 2018 when he showed up to the Golden Globe Awards wearing a Time's Up pin. The pin was designed to show support for women who are victims of. A variety of women started tweeting accusations of in reference to his pin. They literally started tweeting out stories of how he them and hashtagged it #CuteTimesUpPin. Since then, he's been completely MIA. We haven't seen him on the big screen, and he deleted all of his social media accounts. Anything on his IMDb accounts are small projects that he has produced himself on his own budget. His most recent project, Zeroville, just came out, and it's the first time we are seeing him acting in years. However, it's already been titled the biggest box office flop of 2019, earning just $8,000 on its opening weekend in the US. Yikes. And at number 6 is Roseanne Barr. The actress once had her own ABC show titled after her, Roseanne, which is why it is such a shame that she lost it all by another single tweet. People are losing their careers over Twitter. Maybe it is time to delete your account. Besides her work, she's also known for being a Trump supporter, which of course has caused her some controversy. However, it was a specific tweet back in May 2018 that had her career spiral out of control. Her tweets were about Valerie Jarrett, a senior advisor to the former President Barack Obama. In her tweet, she compared Valerie to the cross between the Muslim Brotherhood and the movie Planet of the Apes. ABC canceled her show immediately, which was supposed to reboot the same day, coincidentally. As of January of this year, her Twitter was off limits and she moved into her mother's basement in order to get out of LA. She said that she was worried that everyone hated her and just wanted to avoid the public eye. We haven't heard or seen much from her, but the paparazzi is still trying. A more recent image surfaced a few months ago of Roseanne looking all disheveled outside of her home in Salt Lake City, Utah. Apparently, she was trying to take a picture of the paparazzi's license plate. She looks like a damn hot mess. Halfway through the list, number 5 is Brendan Fraser. 10 years ago, he was one of Hollywood's biggest stars, but then he suddenly disappeared. For 90s babies like me, you would know him from the Mummy franchise, George of the Jungle, and the Looney Tunes. After 2008, he disappeared from starring in big movie roles, and people started saying it was due to a drug addiction. But he finally came out with the truth years later, admitting that it had to do with an incident of He claimed that he was once physically groped by Philip Burke, a former president of the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. Burke called the allegation a, I quote, total fabrication, but still sent Brendan an apology letter after the actor complained to the HFPA. Since coming out with his story, he has slowly been returning to some acting roles, but for the most part, he just lays low at his home in New York. He actually bought a big house that overlooks a farm and has spent the last year going back and forth between home and Toronto. He loves spending time with his horses and relaxing down his little dirt road. Definitely a big step back from the Hollywood lifestyle. Here we are, number 4, with Paula Deen. For years you would have seen her face plastered all over the Food Network. This was until a lawsuit was filed against her by Lisa Jackson, accusing the celebrity chef of racial discrimination. Lisa is Paula's former general manager at one of her restaurants, so they were once very close. She claims that Paula was using the N-word when talking about African Americans. She was asked during an interview if she has ever used this word, and her response was, yes, of course, it's just what they are, they're jokes. Most jokes are about Jewish people, rednecks, black folks. I can't determine what offends another person. After her statement, networks canceled her TV programs worldwide and stores even stopped selling her products. She disappeared from the public eye for a while, but was recognized once again after making insensitive comments about another Food Network star that passed away. Chef Carl Ruiz died at the age of 44, and many celebrity chefs posted beautiful tributes in his honor. However, while appearing on the Big J show, she was asked about his death, and her response was, I'm not familiar with him, but I'm sorry to hear that. You know, they say the restaurant business will kill you. No pun intended. She laughed it off, but no one was laughing with her, and just when you thought she might get off the blacklist, she done did it again. Dug herself a deeper hole. Taking the number 3 spot on our list is J.D. Salinger. Everyone who went through high school had to read the book The Catcher in the Rye, which was written by a famous author, J.D. Salinger. He sadly passed away in 2010 at the age of 91, but before that, his career took a turn and he went into hiding after being blacklisted, but we never even knew. In 2013, 2 authors named Shane Salerno and David Shields published a book called Salinger, which revealed the author's crazy life and uncovered some very heartbreaking stories. Turns out he actually never spoke about his time in the World War II, and he ended up checking himself into a mental institution after leaving to help him deal with what he had witnessed in the war. Once he left the institution, he actually went back into the army and participated in the denazification of Germany. But because of this, there were times that some of his books were turned down. Publishers turned him down because they thought that he was crazy. Shane Salerno said during an interview, being told that he was crazy was a great wound to him. In fact, he teared up in the room and was deeply, deeply hurt. They said that the effects of the war and being turned down as a writer sent him into this life of isolation. He disappeared from everyone and went on to live a very private life. Honestly, after hearing this story, I feel like I really underappreciated the whole Catcher in the Rye book. Like, I hated reading that. I'm pretty sure I didn't. I probably did those things where you googled the notes and it like sums it up for you. Taking the second place on our list is Lelaine, the adored Disney star from the hit TV series Lizzie McGuire. Fans started questioning where she went when she didn't show up in the final episodes of the series, and when they didn't see her return for the Lizzie McGuire movie either. In the movie, they said her character was on a family vacation in Mexico, but the real reason she went missing is because she was actually arrested and pled guilty to the possession of Somehow she managed to keep it all hidden during the time that it was going on. It actually wasn't until she had a warrant out for her arrest that it made headlines. She was charged with a felony after not showing up for her court appearance. After her legal issues were all sorted out, she went on to work a regular job in LA where she said it just paid the bills. It was recently announced that Lizzie McGuire was coming back with a reboot, so fans are wondering if maybe she will be making a return. Is she going to be invited? Will she say yes? We're gonna have to wait and see. Taking our number 1 spot is Richard Simmons. The hilarious exercise guru taught his last exercise class in 2014, and we haven't seen him ever since. Like, literally, he walked out of the Beverly Hills studio and wasn't seen publicly for over 3 years. A podcast was created called Missing Richard Simmons, which claimed that he was being held hostage in his Hollywood Hills home by his housekeeper, or that he was possibly transitioning into a woman. Rumors started spreading, but his brother Lenny Simmons came forward with a statement saying, I quote, "He's not sick. These things about him transitioning into a woman are ridiculous. After 40 some odd years, he just decided that he wants to to rest, he wants time to himself. The only reason he ever found himself blacklisted was because of his choice to leave and how he went about it, without any explanation at all. Fitness friend Billy Blank said in June 2019 that he thinks Richard will be making a comeback, but Richard's representative declined to comment on it. I mean, he's 70 years old now. Let the man rest.